Another edition of Social Media News Live. So excited that you're here to join us. I am actually coming to you live from a hotel room in Lima, Ohio. Lima. I say Lima. It's Lima Bean, Lima, Ohio. So I'm so excited you guys are here. Feel free to ask your questions as we're going along today. We would love it if you would share it out everywhere while we are trying to get, we're having some technical difficulty with Jared, trying to get him in. So thank you guys for being here. You guys are here for us every week. We have the best community. I talked about all of you from the stage at Lima. It was an amazing event. Jessica Phillips does an amazing job. Her team at Now Marketing. Oh my gosh. So cool. Grace, you should have been there. I mean,
I know. I felt like I was there in spirit, though.
I really haven't been to a conference where they treat speakers as well as they do. And I want to show, this is like, I haven't taken a picture and posted it yet because I want to make it perfect, but this is like achievement unlocked. How cool is that she gives bobbleheads of all the speakers? It is so cool.
I love that.
I know. How cool is that?
Jeff C. And even she even got the black shirt right.
I know.
Black shirt and
and the beard. I mean, it's and the curl. I don't know if you can see the curly on the mustache.
Oh, put it up closer.
Yeah.
Oh,
so look at that.
Oh
Isn't that
my
cool?
God. And I like he's got like the color of your beard
I could put it like
too.
on directly on my face, and you can tell, right like that.
Uh-huh.
How cool is that? Yeah, and our friend, look at this. We got our friend showing up. Hey Tim, I know he was on a great show with you earlier this week, Grace. So that is very, very cool. Tim,
I know, Tim.
Thank you for
it was such a great show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a really cool show. He did. I want to just do a quick shout out to Tim, because he did a 24-hour live stream for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society for a Open Your Hearts and Wallets a competition. Philanthropic. I couldn't say that word yesterday when I was here on the show.
Right.
So he was recognized for this, and so yesterday I had him on our show on Restream, Creator Spotlight, where we talked all about what it took to do a 24-hour live stream. So go over there, check that out after this show. But that was really cool. So that's the first time I'd had Tim on. So not Jim, the last, though.
Jim is going, Lima Bean. That's right, Jim. Hey, Jim, if you're still around, we're having issues with Jared. But if you want to pop in, just message Grace and she can shoot you the link. Because I would love for you to talk about Lima, because Jim was here. He did a table talk all about his incredible topic about Amazon Live, which we are live right now. So shout out to everybody over on Amazon watching this show. But yeah, so many of my friends. It was so good to get back. I saw so many of my friends there. I wish Grace was there. Brian Farrell says good morning, all of you lovely people from a non-air conditioned Barcelona. He wouldn't sit too close to him today. It was hot in Ohio, actually. This is the first kind of cool day. Has it been hot in Texas while I've been gone, Grace?
It has been really hot. Well, I saw your volley about being in your little little man shed over there.
Right, yeah. It was warm. And then if you guys, by the way, if you go to socialmedianewslive.com/chat, you can join our volley group. In fact, Eric Fisher, I was able to have breakfast with him and some other folks today, Jim and Chad and some other people we've had on the show. They left a little goofy volley on there, so watch at your own risk. But hi, I miss you most weeks, sadly, but I'm here. Oh, I don't know who that is because I can't see.
You gotta do the
give permissions.
I don't know what it is. Is it on? Well, I don't know what it is for eCam, but for Restream,
Lima sounds amazing. I thought it was in Peru. Yeah, and people are like, "Oh, you're going? That's so awesome! You go to Lima, Peru." I'm like, "No, it's Lima, Ohio." But it was very, very cool. I'm telling you, I haven't seen. Eric Fisher is joining us, so let me pull him in.
Okay, so I have to. I don't know who this is. I think it's just one of our. It says, "Oh my goodness, I want a Jeff doll," and I just want to say that is a Jeff action figure.
That's right. It's got the Kung Fu grip. No, it doesn't. But see, I could just put my face.
It does have Kung Fu grip.
Right there. Look at that. It's just you can't even tell. I could just have this on camera. I love this, Jessica. If you're watching, thank you so much. I've been wanting
it's
one for a while.
Katie Simpson. Should I click Restream? I don't know what the link. I don't have the link ready for Restream.
Are you still at the hotel, Eric?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I'm glad you were able to join
But not
us.
the same hotel, so.
Yeah, he's at a different one.
Here, I
so,
get my caption in.
Yeah, your volley
What does it say? Could you say that but twice as fast?
Yes. Gary Stockton watching from YouTube. Hey, Gary, good to see you. So excited that you're here. Gary is a podcaster as well. He also has side hustle where he's doing voiceovers. So if you want a very cool sounding UK voiceover, you need to go talk to our friend Gary Stockton. So he's amazing. Yeah, Chris, it's a bobble beard. How cool is that? I mean, come on. It's so awesome. And she does it for all the speakers and the table talk. So it is very, very cool that she does all that. So yeah, I have made it, Brian, my own bobble head beard. So yes, somebody else. That's a little creepy if you want a Jeff doll. Are you going to stick pins in it like voodoo and my back goes out?
No.
Yeah. So
that's a whole other Jeff doll. Yeah. So I'm looking at the comments on Ecamm. So I think some of the times they come through as like unknown user on my end. So Jeff might be able to see it.
The same way too. Yeah. So I don't know why. It's supposed to be in a group that we're in. And then Martin says, good morning, looking forward to this podcast and embark on launching podcasts. Well, Jared we're having some issues with, but we got another OG podcaster in, Eric Fisher. Yeah. So if you do not listen to the Beyond the To-Do List podcast, you need to. You think, our podcast is good, but he gets like amazing guests. We get amazing guests like Eric Fisher, but like in the productivity field, like Cal Newport. Who are some recent people you've had on, Eric, on your show?
Oh, it's a good question. Daniel Pink was recent. The Power of Regrets. That's a great book.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see, who else? I'm trying to think back. You caught me off guard here.
I know. Well, we didn't.
There's not been a lot of big name guests recently, but there's been a lot of really good topics and conversations that have been in the thread of especially like questioning beliefs that you've always had, limiting beliefs, things like that from different angles. We just did one. Actually, next week's episode is all about courage. So moving forward, taking action, even though you have fear, moving forward in courage.
Very, very cool. Well, we're going to go right ahead and launch into this. So I'm going to go ahead and start the show. We're going to talk about podcasting trends and profits. And to be honest, Eric knows all this stuff. He's in the middle of some things we're going to be talking about that you may not have heard about with dynamic ads and exactly what that is. So let's start the show, Grace. And
yes, I am ready.
We'll just go through.
I had to pull up Eric's bio to make sure that we got everything here.
Yes, and I'll probably change his on the fly, so you may see some stuff on your screen. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It's just me making.
Just put the bobblehead up. Just put the bobblehead up. Right. You're not using your powers.
What is he doing? What is Eric's going? Is he in the shower?
I was the man behind the curtain.
Oh, I was like, what?
Okay, all right.
Are we ready?
I have to. Okay, go.
Show just got 33% more funny. So
that's right. That's right.
All right. Got a bunch of parents on the.
So we're gonna talk. So here we go. We're gonna start the show. Here we go. Okay. Let me get to my spot. Everything. It's dogs and cats living together. Total anarchy.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I know, this is the power of live. Sometimes things kind of get messed up, and you get to watch us do this on the live as I'm texting Eric.
And once we get started, I want to talk about this remote studio that I'm doing right now because I think you guys will find it interesting. So, okay, here we go. Welcome to Social Media News Live. I'm Jeff C., and you're not.
And I'm Grace Duffy, and this is the show that keeps you up to date on what's happening in the world of social media and beyond. And today we are joined by our friend Eric Fisher, who was such a good sport to jump in at the last minute. And we're going to be talking about the biggest industry trends happening in podcasting and the big question that we all want to know: how can we really make money with podcasting? And then we're also going to get his take on how to stand out in a quickly crowded space, including what type of social media should you be leveraging when you've got a podcast, either as a pro or a hobbyist. And then we're also going to discuss what he thinks his predictions are for the future of podcasting.
And if you don't know who Eric Fisher is, he is the host and producer and all things over at the Beyond the To-Do List podcast. You can find that at Beyond the To-Do List. Beyond the To-Do List, it rolls right off the tongue, Eric, .com. And so make sure you guys go check that out. Give him a rating and review because that really does help podcasters. But he's been doing this, for 10 years? How many years?
The show will be 10 years old in August. So
wow.
It's almost there. Yeah.
That is really cool. So how many episodes is that?
Well, so there wasn't a consistent weekly cadence at some points
Oh,
in
okay.
in the first 5 years, but since then it's been basically that. But we're about 450, so
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
feel nice and good with that number.
Yeah.
Are you
So,
doing anything big to celebrate 10 years? It's a big
oh,
milestone.
I've got some things in the works, some
Good.
things I'm planning, working on. Yes.
yeah.
Looking forward to it.
And I want to do a shout out to our friends over on Ecamm who do sponsor the show, by the way. And so they've got some really cool stuff coming up. So you can go to socialmedianewslive.com/Ecamm. But here they're doing Demo Mode Pros Season 2 that starts June 21st and runs every Tuesday. So if you're wanting to take your live show to the next level or even learn how to do Ecamm better for your presentations or whatnot, I'm using it to shoot my Amazon Live videos with now. So it's really, really cool. So make sure you check that out on every Tuesday starting June 21st. And they also have a new show called Marshall Creates. It's a new live show hosted by Marshall Fox, and that starts on June 23rd. So we mentioned in just getting this whole show set up that we're going to be talking about podcast movement a little bit. Eric and I are going to be there at Podcast Movement. So is Grace.
I was going to say Grace.
Grace is, I saved the best for last, Grace. So Grace is going to be there, but also Ecamm is going to be there at Podcast Movement. They're doing a special get-together, so if you haven't joined their community, make sure you go and follow them on Facebook and all the socials, because they'll make some announcements there. But I'm excited. I'm going to be hanging out with them, doing some stuff. But if you haven't been to Podcast Movement, it is like the biggest podcasting thing, conference around. Tons of vendors, tons of cool stuff. So if you're going to be anywhere in the vicinity of Dallas in, I can't remember the dates, it's the end of August. Yeah.
It's like August.
Last week of August.
Yeah, podcastmovement.com.
Like 23rd through 27th, somewhere in there.
Yeah, so come hang out with
Go
us.
look it up.
It's in Dallas, direct flights everywhere. It'll be amazing. So so Ecamm's going to be there, so make sure to check them out. And also make sure to check them out at socialmedianewslive.com/Ecamm. So, we're going to be talking. Let's talk about our equipment first for a little bit because we are on Amazon Live.
And, well, I want to point out the fact that we planned the show. I knew Jeff was going to be out of town, so he has his remote set up, which I'm going to talk about. Mm-hmm. And then Eric, I just texted him and said, "Where are you?" And he just popped on the fly. So let's talk about what made this all possible.
I had breakfast with Jeff and a few others this morning, and I literally said, "Jeff, I'd love to be on the show again sometime." I did not know you were going to take me up on
today.
At
did
a
not know
notice today.
No.
Right.
No, but I'm glad to.
So let's talk about equipment, because I mean, a lot of the stuff is people always wonder, like, okay, how do you do a podcast? What do you need? And then also, how do you do a live show and /podcast? And a lot of the equipment goes across. Now, I'm on a remote studio, and I've been trying to pare stuff down so I don't have to lug stuff through airports and carry a bunch of stuff. And I learned this from Ecamm, but I'm actually using my phone as my web camera. I don't have any of the new stuff that they announced with the Apple event that's eventually going to let you put your camera on there. But I'm just using an app called Shoot, and it actually gives me a clean feed out from my camera, and I plug it in and I can use it as a source in Ecamm. I have a portable microphone. It's a little portable Rode lavalier mic that I can plug into my laptop, and then I have my phone on top of just my DJI gimbal, and so everything packs really, really small. But I brought my Stream Deck with me to be able to stream everything. So I have my iPad over here where I can have some notes and stuff and run Amazon Live. So I feel like I have a really kind of compact studio for travel, and it's worked really, really well. Now, when Eric and I are back in our studio, we both really love the Heil PR40. That's our mic we use. We use our Rodecaster to record the show on, and it goes through live. It sweetens our sound a little bit. So what am I leaving out, Eric? Our monitors.
The Rodecaster, the earbuds that are clear, that go behind your ear and then into the system, so that you can be free to have head movement. But right now, I'm using my AirPods.
Yeah. So Grace has them too. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yep. No, of course. I have two sets.
They're fairly inexpensive too. They're like what?
Yeah.
$14.99.
I have two pair because I roll over them all the time with my chair.
I have an extra pair over there, and then I'm in my home studio, so I actually have like my big, headphones if I wanted to be that way.
Yeah, somebody said they wouldn't have guessed that it was your phone camera. Yeah, these new phones have such good cameras on them that I was tired of lugging. I use my Canon mirrorless M50 at the office, but I can actually use this with this Shoot app. I think it's like $9 to give you a clean feed, and you can use all the cameras on your phone. And so when I record like Amazon hands videos, like when I'm demoing something, I just have my phone up, and it's plugged into my eCam and to my computer, and I have another source camera that I can use for shooting product videos and stuff, or going live and doing carving stuff like we've talked about. So I really like this, light and agile stuff. So what else did we miss?
Well,
What are
then
you
there's
using?
the one other thing.
What are you using
Well,
for
there's
your
the one
mic?
other thing. Oh, my mic?
Yeah.
Oh, it's the AT 2020. It's a pretty standard mic. It's it's available on Amazon as well. It's really great for podcasting, and it's a good starter mic. I know that there's the Heil that you have, the Heil PR40, and then the Shure mic, which our friends over at Dealcasters.
Yes, they
use.
have some good demos on those. Yeah.
They do have really good demos on there, so check that out. But this is just my same old that I've been using since I've started this. But I also wanted to do a shout out to the thing making this possible, which is the internet. And you use a tool called Speedify.
That's right.
That combines your Wi-Fi signal and the broadband. Now, apparently Lima has incredible broadband, so this is not a problem.
It's really funny. It's actually got a higher upload speed at the hotel than download speed, which I've never had before. So it's working. It looks pretty good. But yeah, Speedify combines things. I've actually got my my phone LTE tied into it, so I can just make sure the signal is smooth. So yeah, Chris says that he loves that Audio Technica mic. Yeah. So it looks cool too. So that's the thing. And our friend Liz Wilcox here. If you haven't watched Liz's episode about email, it's amazing, and she has so much fun. She's one of my favorite people, and she's got a great group. If you haven't checked out her email marketing group, it's like $10 a month, but she gives you like so much stuff. So anyway, thanks Liz for popping by. Let's see. So podcasting, Eric. Let's kind of
Let's launch into the show. So last November and December, we had a 2-part series with our friend Shannon Hernandez on the business of podcasting. So if you want to go back, part 1 was covering getting started with podcasting, and part 2 was all about the tools, techs, motivation, and monetization of podcasting. So, but today we invited Eric spontaneously, I will admit, to talk about the emerging future trends of podcasting and what are the big topics that podcasters are interested in, like challenges, hurdles. What are the big topics in the industry right now, Eric?
Yeah, well, so I'm going to give a shout out to Evo Terra. He is the host, producer, extraordinaire, all-around guy who does his show Podcast Pontifications. And his most recent episode, which I wholeheartedly agree with, he lists off 3 things that podcasters are going to have to get used to or get over. I forget how he phrased it exactly, but it was basically, hey, if you're going to carry podcasting into the future, this is what you need to get used to. And one of the things that he mentioned was very first and foremost, getting used to or getting over the hang-up of opposition towards DAI, or dynamic ad insertion. And that overall, podcast listeners are getting used to that. And if people don't know what that is, dynamic ad insertion basically means that you can put an ad in at any point on a podcast that you presuppose you want that placement to be, whether that's pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll. It's the antithesis or difference between the host-read, baked-in ads that we've become used to and have been touted as more effective because it's the host that's reading it and endorsing it. And that's what I've been doing all along, but right now I am in the process of moving over to dynamic ad insertion while keeping, for the first 90 days, 120 days, that host-read, baked-in option moving forward.
So Eric, what I've heard a lot of is you still have that baked-in type sound where it's the host doing an endorsement or doing the ad, but it's very obviously been placed there. It's not part of the read. Is that the same thing? Can you do that as the host and just be like, well, I want to read my own ads, and then you can place them, or is this more random than that? Is it more like Google Ads?
So Actually, there's one other component, which is
Okay.
not only does dynamic ad insertion is a method for placement, but then you can still have those host read baked in ads used in that way. Or like with a place like Megaphone, which is owned by Spotify, they've got this, what is it called? Spotify Ad Network, SPAN, where it's programmatic ads, which means it's other big brands reading and producing their own ads, but then placed on your show. So you can still, with dynamic ads, go host read baked in or programmatic or a mixture of both, which is what I'll be doing.
So I want to ask, first of all, I want to make sure, is this right? Did I get it right? There?
BeyondTheToDoList.com.
.com. Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Just want to check.
Everyone just witnessed us all reading very slowly together.
That's like, because, that's what's cool about
let me
Ecamm.
Google it.
Change it on the fly. But we were talking about this exact same thing, Eric, during the conference, because I had some questions about Megaphone. One of the questions that I had is like, okay, those ads that you're a part of that network in, do you have any control over? Like, if I'm doing, a Pepsi sponsorship, I don't want Coke to come in and put something like a dynamic ad that's a competitor. You have control over that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, you've got a very broad spectrum of exceptions that you can make, that you can opt out of. For example, one of the things that I'll be doing is marking the check mark for no political ads, because I don't want those of any sort, any side of the spectrum or any part in the spectrum. That just doesn't have a place in my show. So I will opt out of that, and I will go through and it'll be an extensive thing, but once it's done, and I'll be able to tweak things. But yeah, it's definitely, you have the opportunity and the option to have exclusions.
So I want to talk real quick about, you talked about the mixture of things. You can do your own stuff and also the network stuff that you join, or the Spotify spot, or whatever the acronym was. I don't remember. Span. I almost said spam, but okay.
Span.
The question I have is, the comment I wanted to make is, like, I know, like, Amy Porterfield, she has ads that she runs, because she's part of the HubSpot Spotify network. I mean, podcast network. But she also runs her own calls to action. And I know Pat Flynn does the same thing, and they're using dynamic ads, because I've gone through it and it's the same one. It's not baked in. So talk about maybe a little bit how podcasters who maybe aren't, getting the big ad deals or whatever, can use that to grow their podcast by using dynamic ads.
Yeah, so if you're using your podcast as a business owner and you're not interested in baked in ads yourself, whether it's through an agency or a deal you've partnered with, or you don't want to do programmatic ads, but you have your own products that you want to make sure you've got a timely product. Like, for example, we just did Social Media Week Lima, and if that organization wanted to advertise and say, hey, this is going to come up in about a week, grab your ticket now, or have changing deals throughout, they could do that. They could drop in, record their own ad, drop it in dynamically, and then not have to leave that ad in there and create FOMO for something that's already passed, although that might be a great strategy.
Right.
They don't have to leave that in there, and in the people that listen to the episode in the future, it won't be there anymore. It's kind of like not having recorded old episodes of Seinfeld on a VHS tape and then hitting play and watching, an ad for a mattress that's 20 years old because you still have that tape. That ad's gone. It's not there anymore. It's replaced with something else more timely. The ability to be timely and strategic and laser-like focused on your ad strategy towards your own products through dynamic ad insertion is honestly the way of the future when it comes to podcasting and ads and revenue.
Very, very cool.
I think that's amazing, especially at the timeliness, because, we're very careful on the show to talk about events or not, and timing them out. So, and we try not to talk about things that are, we're talking about podcast movement, of course, but that is a big deal.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about somebody who they're hearing this and like, I've always wanted to do a podcast. This is the year for me. I'm going to do it. Eric, you've done like 10 years. What would you go back and tell yourself when you were first starting with the experience you have now that you like, I really wish I would have done this when I first started?
I would have done it like Jeff. No, what I would have done was I would have started it like this. I would have said, okay, from the get-go, make it a video show and have it be something that is created at the same time, video for YouTube and other platforms, live video, as well as doing an audio version of it, as well as snippening, that's not a word, cutting it up into pieces, repurposing it, and using that across. Yes, I would have been way more into the vein of repurposing. Having been down this road so far now with mainly only an audio show, it's a little bit harder to backtrack and then get a rhythm going in terms of editing when it comes to editing video and audio, because those are very different editing styles. You know this, Jeff, having worked with me on things. And so that's what I would say first and foremost is come at it from what's the minimum viable product that gets you the most output to use. But if you're definitely somebody that's has an aversion to video, don't feel like you have to do video. Just because Jeff does it great doesn't mean you have to do it. I just feel jealous.
So,
he does have me, so you know.
Grace is the whole reason people.
That's. I want to switch my answer. Get a Grace.
Get a Grace to help. Amazing Grace. That's right.
But do you think video podcasting has become the norm? I mean, I work for a live video, platform, so of course, this is how I got started with Eric, back at Social Media Examiner days, and then with Jeff. But do you think video podcasting has become the norm, or do you think a lot of podcasters are still wanting to stick with audio and keep things simple? And then, I guess they don't always have to go live, but the comments I always get is like, yeah, that's so much trouble to go live, or they want to just do it whenever they want to do it. So they'll do like 10 episodes on a Sunday night or whatever, and don't necessarily want to go live. So do you think video podcasting is standard these days?
I think that, I don't know that I would call it standard per se, but I know that there are good setups that can be done. I don't think people even think of it as a video podcast. They think of it as a show. Yeah. Then they think of what components of that make sense. Is it a video show? Is it an audio show also? All of the above. It's on YouTube. Some people it's like, it's on my YouTube channel. It's also in all your podcast players, apps of choice. And they don't think beyond, they don't think of it as labels. They don't think of it as, I have to designate it as a video podcast. I have to also call it an audio podcast, or I have to say it's an audio and video podcast, which the language doesn't matter as much. It's more about, can you do a good show? What's the best way for you to do a good show? Stick with that. I think for me, yes, it is probably primarily audio, because then I get to flub up and edit it out and not be live. At the same time, you guys asked me to do this live on the spur of the moment, and no big deal because I'm used to doing it. But that's not the case for everybody. It really matters what your strengths are, what your budget allows, what your time allows. For example, Jeff, I know one thing you can't do with this show is really batch out episodes very easily, because it's primarily a live show first, though you have done that.
Yeah. So, Grace and I have done it before. Like, if we're going to be on vacation with the technology now, we can pre-record it and then play it as if it's live. And most of the time, we tell people that's what's going to go on, and the audience is fine with it. I want to bring up some comments because, like Jim says, face for radio syndrome of people who don't want to do like a live show. Jim, I have a face for Photoshop, is what I always tell people. Just Photoshop it out.
Or bobbleheads now.
That's right.
You have a face for bobbleheads.
That's right. So
face for bobbleheads.
It's very slimming. Did you see how slim it was? That was amazing.
I wasn't going to say that, but yes,
I know you're thinking it. I know you're thinking. But Sean Cannell says that vodcasting is a massive thing this year, and I'm sure they're going to be talking about that a lot at Podcast Movement, because I agree that it is a trend. Spotify's doing stuff, and then also, Eric and I listen, and I know Grace, you do too. Is the email from Tom Webster to I think it's called Share of Ear, his reports that he does, and how YouTube factors into podcast discovery. And I want to talk about that in a minute with you, Eric. But Chris says there's room for both video and only audio, but if you aren't doing both, you're limiting your show/podcast. So that's the reason I did it. Is one, I'm lazy, and it lets me have all this content for doing it one time, which to me is just like I get, you're the best of both worlds. You have video and audio. But let's talk about, because it is harder now. There are more podcasts, Eric, than there ever have been before. There's new ones launching. I think that the average, though, is most people only go for 7 episodes and they quit. I think that was the stat that's being bandied around. So, what do we need to do now into 2020 to get our podcast discovered? Because yes, okay, it's really, it can take the air out of your balloon really quick if you have this great podcast, you spend all this time on it, you get guests and everything, and you get no listeners. You don't have that problem. I mean, I'm not going to give your numbers, but they're impressive. They're bigger than most big names. So I mean, but you've got 10 years behind you, but you have huge numbers of downloads. So how do we in 2022 get discovered and have people subscribe?
Well, most people would not be surprised that it started off small. And what I did was I leveraged my existing network at the time, said, hey, can you follow this? Can you subscribe? Hey, can I have you on my show? All those kinds of things that starting off podcasters do. It's interesting because I've actually got a couple ideas for podcasts and friends with which to do them. And we've been thinking about this. And it's like, okay, how do we do that? I think one of the things that, for example, I'm trying to think, I think it's Wistia. So I'll give them a shout out right now, I guess. But they've got a brand new show that they're coming out with, and they've paid to advertise that show on my show. And so get in front of podcast listeners, do a trade of some sort, do some sort of bartering system where you get exposure. For example, I know that Libsyn does play trailers for people if they send one in and do shout outs like that. So just getting in front, strategically find out where your intended listener, what shows your intended listener is already listening to. So if you're not new to podcasting and you have an existing show, leverage those shows. If you are new and don't have and it's a brand new show and you don't have any other new shows, that's a little bit harder, a little bit tricky. But again, that's where partnerships and leveraging other people's shows and the podcast community at large comes in. It's not easy. Just starting out, you're going to be lucky to get up to, again, unless you're huge and already have an existing brand, you're going to struggle to get your first 100 listeners, your first 1,000 listeners, subscribers, for a while. It could be slow, but that doesn't mean don't do it. It means consistently plug away at it, because one of the things that factors in is downloads in especially Apple Podcasts. The more downloads you start to get, the more they start to push your show up the rankings and you get greater discovery in there specifically.
So a couple comments.
Go ahead.
Oh, I would say hi to Mia Voss. She is talking about live video. She and I, back in, if Dustin Stout's watching, he always says I say Google Plus. Doing it, Google Plus days. Mia and I would do a live shows together.
Summon him again.
I know, I'm going to summon him. But Mark says this. He has a great question. He goes, what about the benefits of asynchronous video? Sometimes the convenience of popping in and out without missing anything is a great way to communicate with your audience. Well, Mark, let me tell you, though, Volley, that's what we do. Yeah. If you go to socialmedianewslive.com/chat, we do that, and we actually play questions from people in our community on the show. And so you can have the best of both worlds. A lot of podcasters, Lou Mangello for one, and they have call-ins where you can call and ask questions and they'll play it on the show. This is like the next level of that. So anyway, Grace, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
You did. Well, I have one big question for Eric, but I wanted to, there was a question about, was that on Podcorn, Eric? That, the thing you were just talking about, was that on Podcorn where you could, what were we just talking about? Sorry.
Podcorn.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
It was talking about we were talking about the technology anyway, it'll come back up. I'm going to think about it again, but so this is the question that I got asked a lot. So I went to this local podcaster meetup here in Dallas. Since podcast movement is in Dallas, they did a local meetup of local podcasters, and they tended to be mostly hobbyists and looking to go pro, but a lot of them were just focusing mainly on it as a side hustle or something to support their main or ongoing business. And so a big question I had, of course, when I told them I do this show was, how important is it to maintain a social media presence just for your podcast? Now, and also I got a lot of questions on what platforms are best and where should we go, and what's the best way to manage it. So I think that's another big stressor. People that aren't necessarily doing this are pro, or this isn't their main thing. It's something they're doing on the side, and then doing social media for their podcast seems like another hurdle. So how important is it to maintain like your own separate social media presence just for your show, separate from, I guess, yourself?
So you've got your own personal stuff, social channels, etc., that you're using, and you're saying how important is it to create maybe their own accounts? A Facebook page, a LinkedIn page, a business for your show,
Just for the show,
etc.
yeah,
See the thing
yeah.
I think it's going to be tricky here. So it depends on what your goal is. If you already have an existing business, I would say leverage those existing business accounts and promote the podcast there in that way. Even go live there. Again, go live there instead. That's what I would leverage that way. I definitely believe in keeping the personal and the business accounts separate. But I think, and actually, I'm a little curious. Like, according to, I want to get Jeff's take on this question too, because he's Jeff C. Manly Pinterest Tips, but also Jeff C. of Social Media News Live, and I know that those have their own accounts, but he also pushes some of the stuff out on his personal accounts. I'm curious what his take is on this.
So I pushed everything everywhere on all my accounts. So I have a queue of our show using a Agora Pulse that goes out to all my, because I'm on all of them. So I'm like, now I don't push it to my personal Facebook profile, but I have a Jeff C. profile. I push it there. I push it to my Twitter account because it's me, and it's like, and I mix things up. I mostly do business stuff, but I put it, some fun stuff in there as well. So I don't have a problem with it. I think it's helped grow the show because if you look at our comments, we've got people popping in from everywhere. We've got people from Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. The people are watching on Amazon Live. So it's whatever they feel like. And it used to be you'd have to like focus on one. This is my opinion. Mm-hmm. But now with the technology, with like Restream and Ecamm, and I can pull comments from everywhere, people can watch where they like to. Like some people don't like to be on Facebook, but they're on YouTube all the time, or they're on LinkedIn all the time. And so I want to be where it's easy for them to watch. So, and the same way with my social posts, I try to drive them to the full episodes where they can watch all the stuff we talked about with Eric. And so that's me. That's probably not a lot of other people, but that's just how I feel about it. Plus it's easy to do now with the technology. So on that note with technology, we have some people talking about, they want to know if Wistia found you on Podcorn to advertise.
Yeah, so that was the question. You were talking about how Wistia was promoting their new show on your show. Thank you for the prompt, our listener here. Did Wistia find you on Podcorn to advertise on your show, Eric?
No, I have an agency, True Native Media, and I've worked with them with great success since late 2017, early 2018. And if anybody wants to know more about that, you can link up to those in the show notes. They've treated me very well, and I've been very thankful for partnering with them. So all of that goes through them, and they take care of it, which means I have less that I have to do to make the show happen.
So before we move on to this next section, I want to get your thoughts, kind of like, okay, 2022, what do you think is coming down the pike for podcasters in like the rest of this year and next year, like technology-wise or promotion-wise, or, we've seen a lot of news of Spotify buying shows, and it seems like there's a lot of shows that are popular that are getting absorbed by networks like Wondery or something like that. So what are your thoughts on the long-term, or what's coming down the technology-wise, or even marketing, or the future of podcasting, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a lot of different ways you can go with this, but I think that it is a continually growing atmosphere and ecosystem, and I think there's still a lot of there's a lot of play when it comes to who's the best host for your audio files / what they bundle in with that, in terms of all the different players there. I've seen some different things on Twitter lately about a couple of them that have been a little bit shady. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus right now, but that's something that continually gets shaken out. I think, as we mentioned earlier, video is, and vodcasting, though, again, to say that this is the year of that is always, in my opinion, somebody who's not been paying attention, because video podcasting has been around since podcasting started, or at least was available on at the time, iTunes in 05. It was later that year and even into 06, 07, where I was watching more video podcasts back then. Now I just watch YouTube. I don't think about it as a podcast. And we should talk about YouTube in a second. I think YouTube is the other piece that they have been making some big plays recently when it comes to being able to import your actual RSS feed right into there and pull your shows in and have them show up on YouTube. But again, I listen to YouTube music. I don't listen to podcasts on YouTube, but there are people who do, and there's an argument as to you better have your show there for the sake of discovery. That's something that I'm still personally wrestling with, how to implement it the best way possible, because I don't want to miss out on people discovering the show there, like a lot of other podcasters do. Discovery, or I should say awareness of the show, is one of the biggest issues that gets brought up a lot when it comes to the future of podcasting.
Yeah.
So talk to us about YouTube. Like, talk to us about that YouTube aspect, because even, like, you know, I work for Restream, live streaming platform, and so we always talk about that. Even if you are going live, there's still people watching us right now that are encountering this as a podcast. They have it on the background, they're doing something else, they're not necessarily watching us intently. So talk to us about that the balance with YouTube you're just mentioning.
So YouTube is primarily a video platform. However, that doesn't mean that there aren't people going there, turning something on the video, and then changing the tab and going about their work, or letting it play through speakers and going about and doing their own thing. They just happen to use that channel, that mode, that medium to consume visually or consume with just audio. And the issue is that a lot of podcasters don't necessarily have, like we were talking about earlier, they either have the urge or have the aversion, one or the other, or maybe the iffy middle, where they're not sure if they want to add a video component to be able to be viable on YouTube, but they also know, kind of like I do, or they also feel that like just throwing their artwork and an audio file that plays as a video up there kind of doesn't represent the fullness of the show. And so there's kind of a middle ground there too as well that we're wondering about, in terms of, is there a happy medium between just throwing it out there for the sake of having it there versus doing what, again, Jeff does, where it's already there on YouTube and it's a video show and you can go and watch it and consume it that way, or retroactively just play the audio later if you don't want to look at Jeff.
Which is an important safety tip. There's some great comments we're having. Like Gary says, he goes, I think LinkedIn will have something for podcasting. I agree, and I think it's in the works. I talked to Judy Fox over, Fox Rocks over on LinkedIn at the conference, and we talked a little bit about the audio stuff that they're doing over there, and they are testing things, and she was, I think, part of it. So I think you're right. It's interesting, like, Facebook gave up on podcasting, but some of these other the places are. Jim over Fusion Marketing, watching on YouTube, says Amazon has done similar. In fact, one of the cool things, like if you're watching on Amazon, we can actually have our podcast from Amazon Music as an item in the carousel where people can subscribe and listen to it for free inside of Amazon. So there's all these cool things that are happening. Let's see. There's Katie asked, do you think it's better to take a juicy clip from the whole show into YouTube and give the link to listen to the users of the whole show? Is that we are doing that, by the way, as well as our full show. So what are your thoughts, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you can get people to listen to the whole thing, great. But if you've got to dive into a high watermark point that, it's the pull quote from the episode, basically. If you can pull that and hook people that way, then they don't have to get through. I shouldn't say that, but I do. If they don't have to dig through the episode to get to that point, or if they know that point's coming up. Some podcasts do this actually, where they'll pull that pull quote out and start their episode with it. So it's like, oh, I'm going to listen for when that part comes up. But if you just pull that out, lift it out, put it out, and promo it that way, it's totally possible. Again, it's what you're Jeff. It's what you're doing, and I admire about what you're doing. Like I said earlier, my approach would have been, and they're coming to get me now. My approach would have been that, I don't know if you can hear that. I hear it pretty loudly, even through my noise canceling headphones. It's a huge.
They're after you.
Truck.
They're after
anyway,
you.
You were supposed to check out at 11. That's probably what's happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what's happening. You're getting too close to checkout.
Yeah. They're
Can you
probably
hear
gonna
that?
they're probably gonna come by my hotel soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Let me just pause real quick here.
so
While we're waiting for the
I
fire
don't know what I
engine to
was
go
saying.
by.
I do remember what I
Yeah.
was saying. What I was saying was, Jeff, you're doing it in a way that is kind of factoring in all the variables. It's live, it's video, it's audio, it's clippable, and you're then chopping it all up and using the whole thing in all these different instances across all the different platforms. It's kind of perfect if you think a bit about it in terms of getting the most bang for your buck with the minimum amount of effort. And some people, again, would say, but going live is a lot of effort. Doing video is a lot of effort. Yes, but you can get over that hurdle if you just practice.
totally agree, and I need to practice more. You were going to say something, Grace, about.
I was going to say that idea of pulling the juicy clip of this whole show and putting it on YouTube, that's actually a way that I've discovered new shows on other platforms, so on Instagram and on TikTok, where they will use the 30-second or the 1-minute clip, like whatever it is, and that's a good way to draw a new audience to your show. So there's one podcast I found. It's all about celebrity memoirs. It's a book. It's a book one. They did all the targeting for it on TikTok, and that's how I discovered them. Was just this one juicy clip, and now I'm hooked. So that's a good way to promote your show and find a new audience.
So one of the things Deb Mitchell asked, she was asking, let me see, if you were going to start a podcast in the next 1 to 3 months, what is the best way to start? The first thing you need to do is get yourself a Grace Duffy, because she produces the show, and when guests come on, we have more people going, oh my gosh, this was so good. I didn't feel nervous at all because I knew what was going on. I had the whole show, what we're going to talk about. I think that makes a huge difference. I think that's the only way we've gotten any legs. Grace and I did this earlier together on Grace and Eric, and then it was Grace and Jeff on another place, and then Grace and I came and started this. And so I think that's our secret sauce. So having it planned out by a professional, or taking the time yourself and planning it out and doing a run of show, saves you so much time and stress. Because, you don't know this is a little secret sauce, but Grace and I are we have a Google Doc open which has our whole thing, and we can type hey, skip that part, or what did you just say, you dork, or something like that. And so we're constantly doing this dance back and forth, but having that is that's the reason we do all this fun clipping up stuff and all this stuff, is because I have an amazing producer like Grace, who co-hosts the show and helps partner with me in all this stuff. So anyway, that's how you should do
LOL,
it, Deb.
Yeah, that's exactly what's in our show notes right now. Right. But to answer Deb's question, it's to build a show, whether you're doing just video or just audio, to build the show for whatever it is. So this is primarily a live show that we repurpose, so everything in the show is built for that purpose. So we talk about describing things, and then vice versa. When I do the shows on Restream, it's the same thing. We're distributing that to make clips, so we build the show around that. But I would love to hear what Eric's take is, having been a pro at this for over a decade now.
That's old.
It is old.
Well, first off, I would say that how I got started was I came up with a bunch of different topics that I thought would make good episodes. I also came up with a list of potential guests, started to marry those together in Venn diagram type process, and I just tried to go as far as I could. I wanted to say, what if I could come up with 52 ideas for a weekly show? Even if I don't do all of them, I at least feel like I've got this runway, this momentum of initial planning, and then you marry that with a run of a show and just getting started, and see how far you can get, and even order those. If, say, you've got 30 to 52 somewhere in there, and you're like, oh, well, if I did a show on this topic, then I'd want to follow up with this one, and then if they covered those two topics, then this one makes sense to do next, and you kind of pick and choose and drag and drop them. That's why having maybe a mind map kind of planned out for that, where you can drag them and drop them, or pick them up and cut them and put them in a different place. By being able to do that forethought, and even approach that maybe seasonally. What if you don't want to do a weekly show and you want to say, okay, in one quarter I want to do 6 episodes bi-weekly? Well, there you go. You plan those 6. You say this quarter's theme, is fill in the blank. Then I say, okay, who do I want to get if I'm doing guests, or if I'm going to do a solo show? Here's how I do that. You just kind of come up with what your option, what fits best for you. In other words, don't get hung up on what everyone else is doing, because you can do a show that you're best topically and voice-wise able to do, which will get better as you do it. But as long as you start and practice in public, like you go back and listen to my first show with Michael Hyatt, it's good, but it's not great. Like, I've gotten way better since then. You just got to start.
I probably digressed a little bit since I started. But before we wrap up, because Eric has been gracious with his time and he needs to drive home and I need to drive home, we're going to talk about kind of the elephant in the room is how to make money podcasting, because I want to have time, because Eric, he's one of the most successful podcasters I know, and he makes money with his show. So a lot of people ask, how can we make money podcasting? So there's a platform that Grace found for us in the short note, and the quote is, podcasting can be a great source of potential revenue through brand sponsorships, ads, membership sites. The horror comedy show Last Podcast on the Left earns over $50,000 per month from Patreon. So there's multiple ways to do it. You get sponsorships. You could do ads like Eric. We've covered some of the ones on past episodes, like even with Shannon Hernandez. Those are some great episodes to go back and listen to in our back catalog. But Eric, you have 10 years of episodes. You also have, all this growth, and you have a huge number of downloads a month. What about normal people who aren't Eric Fisher? How can they make money with a podcast?
People that sleep and
right.
take time for themselves.
Right.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I would say do some research, find out if there's some potential brand partnerships. Again, depends on where you're at in your journey, because even Jeff, when you started this, you weren't brand new to podcasting, but so you had some cachet, some clout, some friends that you could talk to about getting started in that way. You got to feel out your options first. Patreon's always an option. That's actually one of the things that I would have said from the get-go. I would have planned for having a community as part of my show. That's something that I'm now trying to integrate a little bit better, because let's face it, that's one of the things that was appealing about podcasting in the first place, was being able to connect with the listeners in a way that you couldn't really do with any other type of medium that you were creating. So Patreon for sure. Looking for brand partnerships in and of yourself, or if you're up in I think the threshold is once you get to about 500 to 1,000 downloads per episode after about 30 to 45 days, you're kind of prime in that what advertisers are looking for niche amount of cachet and audience, and you can work with an agency like I do, True Native Media. I think when I was working with them, I was already a few levels higher than that. But again, I only got to that level by being consistent and always showing up. I mean, I had an Audible ad within the first 16 episodes of my show back when it first started, but it was for almost no money. It was just for the sake of practicing having done one. I was kind of giddy for having something, to pay the bill of hosting for a few months, And so, but again, if you've got your own products, if you've got your own business, if you can track a way for leads to come through from the podcast, and I mean, again, one of the things that I want to stress here is my show came about because I was phasing out of co-hosting with somebody else on their show and wanted to do my own thing. And when I came up with was I wanted to find out / start relationships with all these amazing people that were doing amazing work, and productivity just seemed to fit the bill in terms of how I can get free coaching from those people, right? And yet also start relationships with them. And so it really can be a not just a business builder, but of a relationship builder, which is what business is all about, right?
Yeah, and one of the things I think is with monetizing is the networking. I was able to, when we first started, is with my network, is asking things. But by the way, for you guys who are listening, somebody said in the thing, it's you had your Michael Hyatt as your first guest. Yeah, he's got some pretty amazing guests. So if you're listening to this, it's Beyond the To-Do List is the podcast. You can search in your podcast player or go to beyondthetodolist.com. It's on my phone. I've subscribed, but leave him a rating and review because that really helps. Sorry, Grace, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm glad you did that shout out too. And then Gary Stockton said Dave Jackson, who runs the School of Podcasting, wrote a book, Profit from Your Podcast. He also has a live show on YouTube Saturday mornings called Ask the Podcast Coach. So thank you, Gary, for that tip. I wanted to ask Eric, what is the experience of building a community around your podcast in 2022? What has that been experience like, and how are you going about it?
Well, I would say Volley is one of the ones, options-wise, that you've got, is to be able to do that. You are doing that well with this show. I am in there, not as active as I have been, but I've been super busy. So it's like, okay, one of the things that building a community requires of you is calendaring and planning and setting aside the time to be part of that, to integrate into that, to spend time with people, to give access, in other words. And so there's that part, and that's also something that you can do with Patreon. That's a thing you can do there, where people in there will get to see the posts and ask you questions, and even get private content from you. Of course, that then means you're creating more content. But then again, if these people are joining and are your patrons, then you kind of owe them that, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing; it's a good thing. Community is one of those things where you can find it in all. I've actually right now I'm actually testing out a few different CRM platforms so that I can kind of mark people down and say, okay, I remember their name. I don't always have faces and names that connect, but once I do and then lock it in, I know you. But having a CRM system where I can start to put people in there and say, okay, I know more about them. And even if I happen to forget, I've got that Michael Scott Rolodex where I can spin it and be like, ask them about their so-and-so, or, and as you get used to using it, you don't need it as much because you've got an actual relationship versus, you're using a software crutch, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I've been part of a number of great podcasting communities, and I like to say that I've been listening to podcasts since the iPhone was the iPod and it had a wheel. So I've been listening for a very long time, and a lot of them offered this place online. It wasn't necessarily on social media; it was prior to social media, actually, where listeners would be able to talk to each other, and then they would actually host meetups and trips and different things. Again, this was over several years. So, is that still something that is valuable? Like, how valuable is it to get your listeners to talk to each other? Because I also think that, being an audio podcast, it's a very personal experience. So I don't think about the other people listening. I just think about me and what I'm listening to. But how important is it to get your listeners together and them getting to talk to each other?
It's huge. And we've seen an example of this. And Jeff, I mean, you and I went to Lou Mangello's Momentum Conference. Mm-hmm. We were speaking there, but we were also then not speakers. And we were just, I hate to say it this way, but I'm just going to say it bluntly, we were all there because we were fans of Lou and also Disney. Mm-hmm. And so it's by getting us all in one place, it's like the energy of one of us in our fandom rubbed off on the other and vice versa, to where we were all feeling more enthusiastic and doubled and tripled down on our commitment, enthusiasm, support, etc. for the person that was the catalyst that brought us all there, which in this case was Lou Mangello and Mickey Mouse, or Walt Disney.
That's right. And so
those are big draws.
So
big draws, though. Those are very big draws.
It was, yes. And so Katie asked, "What is your Volley channel, please?" And that is, I don't know if I can bring it up on screen because I'm traveling and different things. So it's socialmedianewslive.com/chat. That's socialmedianewslive.com/chat. You'll go in there, you'll see a message, and then you can just join. And we would love for you guys to do that because we have a lot of fun in there. In fact, Eric was on this morning. We were at breakfast, and Jim was doing a goofy little video, and so I think that's on there that you guys can watch. So, by the way, Eric, we're at our time because we're going to get kicked out of our hotels if we don't wrap this up. But the most important thing is where people can find out more about all things Eric Fisher.
Yeah, I mean, again, go subscribe to the show at beyondthetodolist.com. Start there. But if you want to connect with me, find me on LinkedIn. Just type in ErikFisher. Look for the bald guy with the beard and glasses. It's me, most likely. And then Twitter. It's twitter.com/Eric with a K, the letter J, Fisher. That's probably where I'm most active on social, other than LinkedIn these days. Connect with me. I'd love to talk about, what productivity needs you have that I can make an episode for.
Awesome. And where can people find their own Grace Stuffy if they want to get Grace Stuffy to do their show for them?
You can't. It's just I belong to Jeff, apparently. So no, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, Grace. I think it's Grace H. Duffy on LinkedIn. Anyway, you can find me. I look like this. This is what I actually look like in real life. That's the beauty of live video. You get to see what people actually look like. So find me on LinkedIn. I also host a series of live shows over on the Restream channels. So right now I'm doing a series called Creator Spotlight, which we highlight our really cool users doing cool things with live video. And you can find us here every week. So next Friday, June 24th, we'll be back in our respective home studios, and find us there.
Yes, and make sure, and by the way, Grace belongs to nobody. I'll just say that. Like, nobody, don't say that I have. But you need to go check out.
Hashtag free
I'll
Grace.
get in trouble with Jody for that one.
Yes.
Sorry.
So the thing is she just, Tim was in here earlier, and Grace just did a live show with Tim, one of the people in our community. So make sure you go to Restream's YouTube channel and check that out, because that's a great episode. Grace does a great job over there. And so thank you guys so much. Richard, thank you for joining us. It's a great show, all watching over on LinkedIn. We could not do the show without you. Thank you so much. Thank you to our sponsors, Ecamm, socialmedianewslive.com/Ecamm. Thank you for Eric Fisher for jumping in from his hotel room. Technology is so much fun. And thank you guys so much for watching. We love all you guys. Thank you, Gary and Deb and Richard and all the folks who left comments today. We appreciate you, and we will see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Wait, how'd you get your video like that?
Right, you got us over here looking like a hot mess.
No, it's actually a powerful live streaming app for Mac called Ecamm Live. You can add some overlays to your video, whether it's a simple graphic or you want to have some titles or other info at the bottom of your screen. You can even add animated overlays like this one or this one. And you can add branded overlays to frame you and your guests and look like a real legit broadcast. And you can save each layout as a scene and switch between them with the press of a button.